then go for it. If it's worth something to you, then do it. It doesn't matter what other people say. Okay, so first and foremost, boom, I'm gonna put that out there. So I'm gonna get rid of my face here, so you don't have to look at it no more. And we're gonna look into this PowerPoint. I just got some couple ideas. I don't want this to be a 2-hour video, but I will say it's probably gonna be longer than most. Which I already make too long of videos. So let's just jump into this thing. Yeah, let's make that bigger. Let's get rid of my face. Nope, there you go. All right. So, pretty dramatic title, I know, but hopefully by the end of this, you can either see my perspective or at least understand what I'm trying to communicate. That's always the goal. But if you don't understand what I'm trying to say, feel free to let me know. This is just my perspective. And I am a person who's been involved in the comic world in regards to being a collector and a buyer and seller a buyer and seller for, I don't know, I've been a buyer for my whole life, but a seller only like a year, and then as a buyer and as a collector my whole life basically. I've been to art museums all over the world. I've studied a little bit of art, and I've collected a little bit of art that goes beyond comic books. But like, so I am not somebody who should be giving like a keynote speaking address at some kind of fancy banquet about art, right? Like, I understand my scope, right? And I'm just going to communicate my perspective based off of my life experience, what I've seen be valued for very long periods of time versus very short periods of time. And so this is my perspective. So yeah, why Marvel cards will crash and sketch cards are trash. All right, which was fun because it rhymed. Right. So this is basically the key topics we're going to just kind of broad stroke over and just get a general idea of. Right, we're going to talk about what the Marvel Universe is, what I mean by that, why and who buys Marvel items, different types of items. And so we're going to try to stick to Marvel. I go off on tangents, but the whole purpose of this is just to stay focused on Marvel. I'm going to use examples from like trading cards and comic books and stuff like that, but the goal is to just stay focused on Marvel. But I am like a squirrel, and I do like shiny objects, right? So sorry for those kind of distractions. So we're going to talk about different types of items, what I consider to be market factors influencing whether or not there's a large supply of demand, right? And I'm not saying supply versus demand. I'm saying where there's a lot of demand. And so the market factors that can potentially influence the demand level, right? I'm going to talk about what I think about the current trading card market and the prices that I see that I think are, well, I'll share my opinion, and the sketch card market. And then we'll talk about what I believe moving forward, right? Like what do I think is going to happen moving forward? Right? All right. So what do I mean by the Marvel Universe? Basically, universe just kind of, I'm stealing the kind of concept from how all the big companies use the word universe and how Star Wars uses the word universe, right? Another Disney product nowadays. So universe meaning everything. It doesn't matter if it's a video game on your cell phone, whether it's a amusement park, a statue, original comic art, omnibuses, these sketch cards. It doesn't matter. If it has to deal with Marvel, boom, it's considered part of the universe. So it's really important to understand that. So if you are getting into Marvel via trading cards, like let's say you used to be really into sports cards, so now you're into Marvel cards because, I don't know, you just see all the hype, you see all these people talking about it, you see the dollar figures that are involved in moving these things. And so you're getting into it, but so maybe your entry point, your gateway drug is trading cards. Realize Marvel has many different product lines, right? Many different categories, genres. And so there's a lot of people coming into Marvel, right? Getting exposed to Marvel for the first time and then further venturing into it from many different products, right? Maybe the very first thing a child sees is a Funko Pop of Wolverine, right? Maybe their first experience with Marvel is at an amusement park or in a movie theater or a comic book, right? So like everybody has a different gateway drug. Maybe yours is trading cards. So you have to understand that where you enter into the universe will automatically bring with you certain implicit bias, right? So like if your entry point into the Marvel universe was movies, that would automatically place a value to everything else in the universe, right? Like a baseline, because you don't fully understand what the other universe products are, because your products are movies. Like that's your thing. Your thing is movies, or maybe your thing is video games. And so you're used to microtransactions, right? Like you're making purchases, but nothing more than like $20, and you're making purchases very frequently. So like that's your comfort level, because that's what you're coming with. And so that's what you first apply when you enter into this universe. You're not, you're a microtransaction person, and then you see, a Wolverine statue that costs you $1,000 to buy, and you're like, whoa, that's a really large purchase. But maybe you got into this whole thing through statues. Maybe you were buying some other kind of statues, right? Or some other kind of art sculpture type pieces, and you come in and you're seeing Marvel statues at $1,000, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, these are cheap, right? But you value the statues, the handmade quality of it, the complexity of it, the fact that it's three-dimensional, the fact that you can interact with it, you could display it on throughout your house. And then so you coming in from the statue perspective, and then you see trading cards, and you're like, why would I pay as much money for a trading card that I could buy another statue? What am I going to do with that little piece of cardboard? What am I going to display it like I can this statue? Is it going to be a part of my home decor, right? So everybody that enters into this universe brings with them a very specific set of implicit bias, a very specific set of expectations. And so when you start venturing into the different items, there's like barriers and learning curves that you have to overcome to understand those things. And so as we talk about trading cards and sketch cards, unfortunately, it is my belief that the people entering into the market are people from other trading card worlds, right? And so they're bringing with them their implicit bias. And we went through the comic boom, we went through the sports card boom, and now we're going through the Marvel card boom, which I believe is on its way down. I believe it started going down in the beginning of April. This is April 2022, so I believe that the downward movement is starting in Marvel cards. Comics, obviously, were already down, and we may continue to go down, but that's comics. That's a different genre. So now Marvel trading card boom is starting to go down, right? Market saturation is completed, and we are on the decline. And I believe that because the trading card boom happened first when it comes to sports cards, the people involved in that transitioned over to Marvel cards, and they applied the same principles that they had with sports cards. So one-of-ones were sought after, right? Just like in sports cards. Even though it's not the same thing, that's what they saw. And so they tried to apply sports cards knowledge to comic knowledge, specifically for trading cards. And unfortunately, they were just applying that knowledge and not trying to learn about the product and learn about the universe that they're now stepping into, because they're not stepping into basketball universe, right? They're not stepping into the NBA. They're stepping into NBA products. They're stepping into Marvel products, which is a different, complete beast than sporting goods. Because in sporting goods, you're going to have a lot of money come from apparel, right? Jerseys, hats, etc. A lot of money coming from also video games with microtransactions. Oop, I don't know what I did there. There we go. And so there's different things, right? Autographs in the sports card world, basketballs. If you're going to actually buy the actual physical basketball, think of that as like the comparable for statues or something like that. And especially if they're signed, right? So it's a different animal. And when they came over, they just started applying their knowledge base, and they brought with them all their implicit biases, expecting to have the expertise when it comes over here. And they're assigning values based off of what they experienced in the trading card boom. And now look at the trading card boom, right? For sports cards. It is not doing good right now, right? Like a lot of people are losing money because they just thought I was going to go to the moon forever. And so they weren't actually paying attention to what the actual true values of these items are, because in the end, true value is determined by the end user. And so if you're an investor, you're not an end user, right? You're just not. You're not going to be somebody who actually ends up holding on to that item for the rest of their lives, collecting it or displaying it in their home. Or, if you're an investor, you're moving money around for appreciation, for tax evasion, etc. So think about that, and think about the Marvel Universe and how big it is, right? And everybody's got their gateway drug. All right, so who and why? So I just alluded to some of this. So there's investors. In my definition, there's three broad groups: investors, collectors, and randoms. Investors are looking for money. They don't actually care about the item. They're looking for money, appreciation, trying to hedge inflation, things like that. And so they're just focused on the dollar bill aspect, and they move from market to market. Investors don't just stay in one market. They will stay in the comic book market or in the trading card market for as long as it suits their goal of making more money. That's the whole purpose. And as soon as it stops, they're going to find the next market. Maybe the next market is the downfall of used car sales, right? or maybe it's solar panels, or maybe they go into stocks, whatever it might be, they move. So the investors who really got into the comic boom, really got into the sports card boom, and now are really into the Marvel card boom, they're just, once they start leaving one, the market starts to go down, and then they go into the next one, and then once they start leaving that one, the market's going down, so they start to leave, and now they're into Marvel cards, and the market's going to start going down, and they're going to leave. And where are they going to go? Who knows? Who freaking knows? But the investors don't stick around for the long term. They're here to make short-term gains, and they try to move the money as fast as they can and make appreciation. Collectors, they're always going to be there. They're always going to be there to stay. I believe because of the hype and because of everything, we have created a larger population pool of collectors overall. I think there's some investors that may have gotten into it that decided to stay because they actually love the products, whether it be sports cards, comic books, or trading cards. We're going to stick with trading cards here. And additionally, there's a lot of youth that came into it, and maybe they're building that fundamental nostalgia, right now, those key memories where when they turn 30 and 40 years old, they're going to come back, right? Because they had the nostalgia of the sports card boom, the comic boom, and the trading card boom for Marvel, right? So I believe the collector population pool is getting bigger, but the investors are leaving. And then there's random people. Random people are just like future hoarders, AMC specials for hoarder, A&E specials. And they just like shiny things. So I got pictures up here. You could figure out which ones are which. Hoarders, bottom right. Right. Motivation for the why. Okay, this is important to know. So now that you understand who's involved, right, the three broad categories, why are they involved? Investors, really interested in the top two: money, tax evasion. You could say tax avoidance all you want, or tax evasion all you want. I know they are differences, but for all of us, we're just talking about broad stroking. They're trying to not have to pay taxes. This is an unregulated market. So if you buy, a beautiful Hulk 181 first appearance of Wolverine on cover, and first full appearance in a comic book, and you're like, okay, I can buy that and create a historical transaction, something that's reportable to the IRS. So if I form an LLC, I start my own little business called Las Vegas Collectibles, and I can generate a receipt by the purchase of a Hulk 181 where I purchased it for, I have no idea even what this thing is. Let's say it's going for $10,000. So I bought it for $10,000, and then I can take it to a trade show and sell it for cash to somebody in person for $15,000. So I now have a unregulated sale, right? So I just have $15,000 in cash. I can report to the IRS when I make my deposit into my bank account for my business checking account. I can deposit $9,000. And say that this was for the sale of the Hulk 181, where I lost $1,000 on the sale, even though in reality you gained $5,000. You can, when you actually create the transactional receipt, you're reporting a loss. on this piece of inventory, right? Because it's just inventory when it's in a business, and you just lost money on it. So, and it depends on the game the investor is trying to play. I don't play any of those games, but I'm fully aware that those games are played, and I think everybody is. So let's not kid ourselves that people do this kind of thing. And so, and then, that $9,000 is just the gross sales that you report. And then you have to, that's not your net sales. So then you're going to write off, how much labor costs, how much, all this other expenses, because that's not your net sale of it. And then you have $6,000 cash unregulated, right? It's just, it's just $6,000 cash. So you can use that over the next, maybe 6 months of buying groceries and filling up your gas tank. Maybe you can use that on going to another booth at the trade show and spending $6,000, and it's an unregulated transaction, right? Because you just bought something for $6,000 cash. You don't want a receipt. You don't want any transaction history. You just walk away with a new item for $6,000, and you have created a trail of basically ghost purchases, right? So that's the investor side of things. The collectors, they're more into this thing for the nostalgia that it brings. Like I brought up the kids that are involved in the hobby now. When they turn 30 to 40 years old, they're going to be all depressed and hating their lives and going through midlife crisis like the rest of us, right? No, I'm just kidding. Like some of us. And they're going to be trying to chase those happy feelings. And so when they see Wolverine or they see Superman or whatever it is, they'll be like, oh, I remember when I was a kid and I was going to trading card shows and, oh man, I had such a good time. So those kids are going to have that feeling of nostalgia. They're chasing that emotional reaction. So in 20 years, you're going to see those kids that are involved now come back into the hobby and try to relive the glory days type of thing, right? And so we're doing the same thing now, right? All of us that are involved in this, that are basically in their 30s or above, we're chasing those feelings. There's some kind of emotional reaction that these images and that these products give to us, that maybe it's innocence, being naive, just pure joy, whatever it is, right? So that's that nostalgia factor. That's why they're in it. That's why a lot of people get in. That's why people stay in it, right? Like if you're in this for nostalgia, I doubt you're going to leave. You might trade items. Maybe you'll eventually get fancier items, but it means something to you. If you're chasing nostalgia, there's a reason. And so those are the people that are going to stick around. There are people that just want to collect things, right? So maybe they got a gift of a couple comic books of a Wolverine series, and now they just want to collect the whole series. They don't even want to read them. They don't care about the content of them. They just like to complete collections. Right? There's those kind of people. So, there's all these, and then there's just people that like shiny things. So there's all those different kinds of people. Up on the screen, I have multiple versions of Wolverine, and they're from different eras, right? Different evolutions of the character. And everyone looking at this screen who knows who Wolverine is in comic book form, right? We don't have Hugh Jackman up here from the movies, but if you look at this screen, you might have an emotional reaction to one of these. There's a Jim Lee, right? So 1990s. If you got involved in Marvel, maybe my entry point, for instance, my gateway drug was in the center of the screen here. It was the X-Men animated series, 1992. So this version of Wolverine is what I picture Wolverine to be. Like, this is who Wolverine should look like. Like, this is it. Like, you see the way the claws come out of the hands, the big eyes, the black things, his boots that are ridiculous, everything that's ridiculous, right? Like, that's the Wolverine that I know, and that relates to me. You can see his comic book form, Jim Lee's, again in underneath the word motivation. You can see him there, and for me, that's him. But maybe yours is the first one. Maybe you were around when Hulk 181 came out, and that more compact Wolverine with that very rounded claws, they really curl, and his headgear that is completely different. His shoulder pad things are smaller. His boots are less ridiculous. Maybe that's your Wolverine. And that's Herb Trimpe. He's the original designer. John Romita Sr. Altered it a little bit from my understanding, but that's the original design. Maybe that's your Wolverine. You know, and if you're chasing nostalgia, you see one of these, and one of these really hit home, right? There's a Mark Silvestri up here, a John Byrne, and an Adam Kubert one up here too. If those relate to you, you know which ones those are, right? Like you just see that and you're just like, oh, that's Wolverine. And so that's going to be what you chase. But investors, they don't care. They just want to know which one has the potential to give them the biggest margins in either short-term or long-term investment strategies, right? Collectors, you're just looking for that nostalgia typically. All right, so the current trading card market. Take a look at this. I don't know. I'm just going to give you an understanding of what these different things are, first of all. So first of all, top left, Ginger Man, Marvel Cards Collecting and Investing YouTube channel. Highly recommend him. He cuts to the point. He's clear and concise. I like what he does. He's very consistent. Basically, he's the PSA. He's the public service announcement for all the things that are selling. So I stole those images from his channel. Good shout out to him. Give him a look if you're interested in anything Marvel card related. Yeah, so he posted a video and I screenshotted these from there so you can see for the red PMGs, they're all out of 100. You can't see all the grades on that image, but it sold for $60,000. And that's 12 cards. And then that top card, $1,500 for an out of 10 Firestar. Who the hell is Firestar? Come on. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. But it's like he said, most likely it's an individual trying to collect one of all the green PMGs. And so they don't come up that often because they are numbered. They are rare cards. So maybe someone's just trying to collect the whole set. Maybe they think if they collect the whole set, it's worth more money, right? Again, that can be somebody who's just a set collector, somebody who just truly loves Firestar and wants to own everything of Firestar, or it's an investor. I mean, you can make up your own assumptions. Me personally, I think it's an investor. Yeah, but there you go. You know, and everybody's got their thing. So you can see there's somebody that collects a lot of statues. There's somebody that collects like chessboards and other things in glass display cases. There's the Batman video game collector. The original comic art on the right hand side, you'll see Batman. I don't know who drew that. I know that signature, but off the top of my head, I don't want to say the wrong thing. But that's a beautiful Batman drawn on a comic book, and it's encapsulated and graded, and it's got a yellow label, which means somebody actually witnessed the artist draw and sign that product, so it's verified. And then the original sketch art on the bottom right by Heritage Auctions, that's where it's being sold. And you can just see that it's J. Scott Campbell. Heritage Auction has a vetting process to make sure that everything that they list is original. Now, there are mistakes made by everybody. I mean, PSA makes a mistake, it seems like every day. So everybody makes mistakes. So it's not encapsulated. However, it's Heritage Auctions is pretty well respected and reputable. CGC's is the most, I believe, reputable in the industry when it comes to comic-based things, because they have to have a CGC qualified person witness the art and the signature. Now, an artist can bring a product that's already drawn, give it to a person with a CGC witness and tell the CGC person, yes, I drew this before I came here because I wasn't going to have enough time. So I'm letting you know I drew this, and then they'll sign it in front of the CGC person, you know. So there's always that extra layer of verification where there is no extra layer of that with so many other products, especially these Marvel sketch cards. So, I mean, just look at the prices. Just look at the prices. Now, that Batman comic book most likely will be selling anywhere between $200 and $600. All right, at the most. The original sketch art on the bottom right could sell for multiple thousands of dollars, but it could also go for less than $1,000, because sketch art, you never really know who's buying at the time and everything else. So look at the prices, and maybe they make sense to you. Maybe they do. So in my experience, if a person creates something by hand, it's always worth more. So for instance, if I want to get a computer, you can go to Walmart and buy a computer there. It's not going to be custom. It's not going to be anything. It's going to be out of the box. It's going to be, you know, next. You know, there's going to be multiple copies of them. It's not going to be a one-of-one type of thing. Or you can go to a computer shop and get a computer tower built custom to your design. specifications. There'll be only one of them in the world, you know, and the quality will be based off of the quality of the person actually creating it. And so which one's going to cost you more? The one created by hand that's unique and custom, or the one that's coming out of a Walmart, right? Now, I have an implicit bias. I prefer handmade things, all things. And I believe that the market as a whole pays more for handmade products, right? I guess that's my overall thesis on Marvel cards and sketch cards. If it's created by hand, it's worth more money, period. And if those two things, if the mass-produced items and the created by hand items are at a balance, so for instance, the mass-produced items are valued higher by the market than the handmade items, then there's going to be a correction. Either the handmade items are going to go up to be above the mass-produced items, or the mass-produced items are going to crash. And it is my belief that the mass-produced items are going to crash. So that's the root of this whole video. And so when it comes to PMGs, you can see on the top, that's a 2020 PMG. And the red ones are a 2015 PMG. And there are PMGs, I believe, from 2013 to 2022. I think they're coming out with PMGs this year. I'm not, don't quote me on that part. But there are multiple years of PMGs. So there's a bunch of these things. Additionally, on these cards, you don't know who created that image, right? There's no signature. There's no anything. It is a mass-produced image. In fact, the image itself will most likely be on the base cards. I don't know if it's true with all the different sets, like 2020, 2015, but the image is the same as the base cards. The only difference is PMGs say PMG, and they have a different color background, and they're numbered, right? But the image itself is mass-produced. It's not unique. It's not custom. It's not original. It is an image that was generated by an artist who isn't named for the most part. Most of the time they're not named. Sometimes they are, okay? There are exceptions. Sometimes they do state who the artist is on the back, or you can look up the checklist off of the manufacturer and actually find out who drew each image, but it's work. And they didn't draw the actual image that you're seeing. It's just a copy, right? It's a copy. And so in my Timmy brain, in my simple brain, if I had a copy of an image and then the original of the image, I would pay more for the original, right? Like the original should be anywhere from 3 to 10 times the price of the copy, depending on how many copies there are, right? And what's special about the copy? Is it archival paper that's used? Is it handmade papyrus? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are things with the copy that can alter the value of the copy. But if it's just mass produced, who cares, right? And as far as my Timmy brain goes, the money would always be in the original, right? Like there's nobody out there buying prints of Picasso's for the same price as original Picasso paintings, right? Like these are all art items. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are coming from the perspective of trading cards in the sports card world, and they don't see them as art items. They just know this card, there's only 10 of these in the world. So because there's only 10 of them, that means it's worth at least $1,000. Like, it's just arbitrary. There's no end user appraisal, right? Whoever the end user is will be setting the market price over the long term. In the short term, money dictates prices, like, period. But over the long term, the collector sets the prices. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So that's why the comic boom ended and busted, crashed down. That's why the trading card for sports boomed and busted and is coming back down. And that's why Marvel cards has boomed and is coming back down, because these investors went in looking for that quick dollar, looking for that appreciation. And then the end users weren't buying. It was just other investors. There's a few end users that actually have the disposable income to make some of these purchases, and they don't really care if this Batman video game is $3,000 or $30. They're going to buy it either way because that's what they want, and they have the disposable income where the numbers don't really mean anything. The majority of collectors are not those people. The majority of collectors work hard. In my experience, from all the people that I've met in the industry that are collectors, most have freaking 48-hour jobs, have a family to feed. Most of them are not wealthy retired people. The majority are working everyday blue collar people. There is a percentage of white collar, there is a percentage of retired persons, absolutely, but the majority, the largest percentage of people in the collectible realm mindset have 9-to-5 jobs, right? Work swing shift, look forward to a cold beer and reading a good comic book. Like, they're not spending $1,500 on a 7 of 10 green Firestar from 2020 Marvel X-Men, right? They're just not. And so in the long term, those are the people that are going to set the price for products. The manufacturers set the price based off of how much it costs them, plus the amount of money that they want to make for their bottom line. So these statues, maybe it costs them $200 to create through all the resources, paying all the people, the sculptors and the manufacturers. And then maybe they want to make 20% on their money, so they charge $220. Or maybe they charge $250 because of taxes and everything else. They end up with $220, right? Like, large companies base prices off of cost of materials plus the percentage and that bottom line for the company. Collectors understand that, and they operate within whatever part of the universe they can afford, right? And then the investors don't care. They just want to buy stuff up and try to sell it for as much money as they possibly can. And most of the time, they're just selling them to other investors, not that long-term collector. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. If a mass-produced Firestar 2020 green PMG out of 10 sells for $1,500 in a handmade J. Scott Campbell Phoenix original art sells for under $1,000, one of those two things is wrong. Handmade products are worth more in any industry. So what are the market factors that can potentially impact the supply of demand, right? Not supply versus demand. I'm talking about how much demand is going to be out there. Because you've always got to look ahead, right? Like, if you are in this to make money, you have to understand the time value of money, right? Like, you have to understand, if you put $100 into a trading card, how much money you're going to get out of that in 5 years. What's your expectations? So you have to pay attention to what is influencing whether or not there's somebody that's going to be there to buy it, right? If your goal is to make money, you got to pay attention to these things. And everything is going up. People have been spending all this money that was free to them. They're on unemployment getting free checks. So there's this mentality of less work, more pay, and buy whatever the hell I want type of thing. Going YOLO on meme stocks and freaking Dogecoin or whatever, because they didn't earn the money, right? They didn't work for that money. And so they just spent a bunch of it. And now what's going on with that inflation, right? Because that money supply got inflated. What's happening, right? Everything costs more. And people are going to start reducing their wants and focusing on their needs. And that's going to last for a few years. So think about that. If you buy into something now, where are those prices going to be for you to make any money off of it? If that's your intent. All right? If your intent is to make money off of it, what's that level of demand going to be in 3 to 5 years? I mean, hopefully you can make a quick buck and you just flip it and get the hell out. I mean, all the more power to you if you can. But you have to think about this stuff. You have to think cause and effect. okay, for everything that's happening around you. All right, so trading card market, look at these prices. Ridiculous. I'm not going to get too in-depth in this, but you can see on the left some sold listings. You got a January, they're out of order because on eBay I sorted them by highest price. So in January it was $9,000. In February it was $15,000, almost double, right? Basically double. It's not double, but it's less than double, but oh my goodness. And then in April, you have a different box though. This is a different box. It's not the same. $4,000. I don't know what's going to happen. One of those cards inside of that, I'm bringing this up because honestly I have questions, right? like this is all ridiculous to me. January 30th, a Venom, you know, out of 100 sold for $1,600. Oh my gosh. Right? There's 100 of those in the world and sold for $1,600. It's a cool looking Venom, by the way, with the red. Really like the image. Don't get me wrong. I like all the images, but I don't know who drew that, right? Like the people that are buying these things, I'm not 100% sure what their end game is. Do they just want it in their collection? Is their goal to trade that for a LeBron James rookie card or something? Is their goal to fund their college education off of that, or their child's education off of that? I don't know. Is if they're buying it at 1,600, are they expecting that to go to 3,000 in 3 to 5 years? By then, how many more PMGs are they going to come out with? They come out with more PMGs like every 2 years, it seems like, or every year almost. It's freaking crazy. So that is a mass-produced product. That is not an original art piece. The person who drew that has the original art for that card and would most likely sell it to you for less than $1,000 or around $1,000. So you're buying a mass-produced product for $1,600 where there's 100 of them, and this is 2015, so in 2020 there's going to be more, and in 2013 there was. I get that there's only 100 of this image with the red background and it looks really cool. It's just $1,600 to me. Just doesn't make sense when you could get handmade things for less than that, right? And there's no verification of who that artist even is, and it looks like every other card, right? Like it's on the same piece of cardboard. It's got the same finish. It's got the same ink cartridge ink that's printed onto it. It's not even like hand drawn. Right. So these prices, I believe, are extremely high for mass-produced items. Okay, so this is the base set. You can see the checklist and everything for 2015. You can see that they have signatures here and they list the different artists that sign them. All of them amazing artists, by the way. Highly like all those artists. And then you have the sketches, right? And we're getting into sketches now. And it lists the characters that are sketched. It doesn't say who sketched them. It doesn't verify that anybody specific sketched them. And then the signature cards, right? That's checklist. There's no verification that they actually signed them, or how many were signed, or if they were witnessed to be signed. It just says that they signed them. And I don't know about you, but I don't trust people. I don't know Flair. Flair doesn't know me. And I'm just supposed to trust that they sent out all these cards and they got signed by the actual person and not their agent, not their assistant. And then not only that, like if you're not aware of what that card is supposed to look like, maybe you went to a show and somebody just signed it. Now on the back, it does say, congratulations, you just, you acquired a card that was signed by a Marvel artist, but it doesn't even name who the artist was. So on the front, it could be anybody's signature. So there's just all these kind of, it's like everybody's just on the honor system. And then the sketch cards, who drew those? Who drew that Hulk? Who did? And why should I care? If you look at an item and it doesn't create an emotional reaction out of you, you should say, why the hell would I care? Right? And try to answer that question. If you can't, walk away. There should be no FOMO. It should be, why do I care about that Hulk? That doesn't look like any Hulk of my past experiences with comics, where that creates an image variation. That can be a zombie from a video game. Like it's not the right color green. The facial proportions are wrong. He looks half gorilla zombie. He looks like a half-dead gorilla zombie. Nothing about that image makes me think Hulk, other than it says Hulk on there. Like, if it just said half-dead gorilla zombie, I'd be all about it, right? Like, I'd be like, yep, that looks like a half-dead gorilla zombie to me. Like, so I don't get it. And I'm bringing this information to you so hopefully you can look at these things and really take a breath and look at these things and be like, why would I pay money for this? Why? And then if somebody says, well, it's a 1 of 1, then think, okay, like trading cards for sports over the last few years, how many 1 of 1 variations were there for every player? Zebra stripe, blah, 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 stripe, blah, blah. Just because it's 1 of 1, that does not make it special. Okay, the use of the numbering system and the use of that terminology is creating dilution of value in the terminology, right? Like, if something is 1 of 1, it should be truly special and truly original. But then there's multiple 1 of 1s. Like, the 1 of 1 aspect is not supposed to be the selling point. The content of the item should be the selling point. They're creating fake value. That's not actual value. That's fake scarcity. It's not real scarcity, right? So just because somebody's put 1 of 1 on something, it doesn't make it special. All right, I want to get into this really quick. If you do not know how sketch cards work, how that process is actually done, Marvel gets a stack of blank sketch cards, right? They all look the same. So in this case, this is 2020 Marvel Masterpieces. They would be all blank on the front, and on the back, they all say the same thing, which you can see up here on the screen. 1 of 1, drawn by Marvel Masterpiece. Congratulations, you have received this hand-drawn Marvel art sketch card, and it says the name of the family of Upper Deck, and yeah, you got this sketch card. So they mass produce thousands of these blank cards, and then they take stacks of them, let's say stacks of 1,000, and they send them to agents of different artists like Mick and Matt Glebe, these twin brothers. They have an agent, and they're in charge of acquiring jobs and negotiating contracts and blah, blah, blah. So the agent does the contract work and gathering all these cards. So the agents themselves, think of it like record companies. They have a stable of talent. So the agents will have anywhere from 1 to 100 different artists, right, in their Rolodex. Like, it's like free agency in sports, right? A bunch of like basketball stars will have the same agent. So the agent does all the work, right? The negotiating contracts, blah, blah, blah. The players, the talent, artists create the product, but the agents negotiate all the money. They're the point of contact. So Marvel, let's say, sends 1,000 cards of these blank cards to Mick and Matt Glebe's agent. The agent then sends out 100 cards, 100 of these blank cards to all of their artists, right? So let's say they have 10 artists in their stable, Mick and Matt Glebe, so they get 100 blank cards, and the agent says, okay, I've negotiated a contract. If you complete all 100 in the next 30 days, you will get a check of $10,000, whatever it is. Return them to me, and you will get the check. So Marvel, through the agent, negotiates to a contract agreement for each of the artists. And so Marvel sends out these products, and then the agent sends out those cards, and then all the cards have to be returned to the agent, and all the cards have to be returned to Marvel because they have the Marvel logo on them. It's a Marvel product. They can't have it in circulation without their approval. And the reason I know this is I have a buddy who's an artist who got a bunch of blank Marvel cards from their agent. And he's an individual who likes to draw voluptuous females, right? And so he drew a bunch of Marvel characters with big old boobies. And because of that, when the cards finally made their way back to Marvel, paid for the work that was created per the contract of the agent, and they literally put it in the furnace. They incinerated all of his cards because they can't let those images be related to the Marvel brand, be in circulation, right? So my artist friend took pictures of him with a cell phone, but he's not allowed to share those. He's not allowed to make money off of those or anything like that because Marvel destroyed those images and said they showed too much cleavage for their brand of characters. So my friend, my buddy, is not a famous artist. He's an Instagram type of artist. You could pay him $100 to draw characters on the Santa Monica Pier. He's nobody special, right? I mean, he's extremely talented, but he's not a significant individual in relation to the comic industry, in relation to all the characters he drew, in relation to Marvel. He's just a random dude who likes to draw. And Mick and Matt Glebe are random dudes. They're great. They're skilled. This Wolverine up here, I wouldn't pay a dime for because it has no relation to that Jim Lee Wolverine that triggers my nostalgia. This Wolverine looks ridiculous. You know, he looks short and chubby, and his proportions of his head to his eyes and his mouth just seem completely off. It looks like he's got a mouthful of cotton balls. I got nothing for this guy. And his forearms, like his left forearm, looks so thin. Like, come on, man. He's going to break an arm if he tries to cut somebody open. So none of this makes any sense to me. And it's Mick and Matt Glebe. Is that Herb Trimpe? Is that the guy who drew the very first Wolverine? Is he a significant artist? No. It's just some Instagram dudes that live in Omaha. Like, why are you paying money for this? I don't get it. Oh, it's one of one. There's only one of these. Yeah, well, there's only one of my dirty shoes. I lost the other one because a dog ate it up, right? I got the left. I don't got the right. You want to give me $1,000 for my left shoe? It's one of one. It doesn't mean anything. Here, I'll draw it on a sketch card. I'm Instagram famous, so it's worth money. No, that's not how valuations are derived over the long term, right? First of all, you can't even prove Mick and Matt did this. Right? There's no statement. The card doesn't even say their names. It's their signature, but did one of them sign it? Right? Or did the agent sign that? Do you know? Did they draw that or did the agent draw that? Nobody knows. There's no confirmation of work. There's no documentation for showing provenance, right? Where did this come from? Show me the chain of custody. How did it get from Marvel to Mick and Matt and then back from Mick and Matt to Marvel? How can I trust that this is the actual product of Mick and Matt? And then, why are those artists significant? Did they go through some kind of life struggle where Wolverine saved them, and so everything they draw of Wolverine has special significance and there's a backstory? Or were they paid $100 to draw Wolverine? Were they paid $1,000 to make this image, and so they drew it? They could have got paid $1,000 to draw the Tooth Fairy. It doesn't make it special, right? This is not a special product. So where's the value of that? These are just more examples of what I'm trying to communicate. This artist named FX, this artist named Sana Yu. Who the hell are these people? I knew kids in high school and in junior high and elementary that would draw images just like this in their freaking notebooks. Who are these people? Nobody knows. And nobody can verify. There's no documentation of provenance. And look at the quality of that sketch card for the Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel. The back of it, it's all damaged to hell. These artists don't care. It's not like they have it sitting down on like on a microfiber cloth and are being very, gentle with it and making sure they're not damaging the corners. They don't care. They're destroying these things. They're just pumping them out because they're getting paid $1,000 a pop. So push it out, push it out, push it out like that. And who the hell is FX? Is he the leader of Marvel? Is he a famous artist that revolutionized comics or something? No, he's nobody. He's just an Instagram artist. Like, why? If you went to an art gallery and you had Monets, Rembrandts, Picassos, Da Vinci's, like all these things in a show, in a freaking hall, would FX be up there? What kind of significance did FX play in comic art? Right? Why is this person important? You need to start asking yourself this. If you're buying these things, you need to start asking yourself, why? And truly, in 5 to 10 years, or when FX dies, who's going to buy his products? Who's going to buy your products that you have of his? Why? Do you even know who this person is? Do you know if they live here or if they live in Indonesia? And if they do live in like freaking an Asian Pacific Island country, how do you know he's drawing it and he's just not having all of his freaking brothers and sisters and cousins and family friends draw this thing? Where is the provenance? Where is the chain of custody? Where is the signature of an individual that has some form of trustworthy background credentials to verify that this was actually created by the artist you're claiming created this thing? Like, come on. What is this? This one doesn't even have a freaking name on it. It says, it doesn't even spell Wolverine right. Wolverone? Pico? Who is this? And I literally took the time earlier and drew this. I threw it away, but like, this is not a hard drawing. This is not made by somebody significant. The image itself looks kind of sad. I don't like anything. You don't even know who drew it. There's not even a name on this. Right? There's not even a legible signature. I'm like, who is this? And then this is an image just to show you how people are displaying these things. I think these are the most common that I've seen in houses and in stores. Look at how this looks. The Los Angeles Dodgers, that's kind of cool. I like that. Stands out. I think you could have did a better frame on that. But the images, everything just kind of blurs together. Like, that's not art to me. I don't know. Would you put that up on your wall? If you're married, would your spouse let you put that up on the wall? Like, that's not art. So you got to think about that. Like, how are you going to display this? To me, this is artistic. These are all okay, so that's another thing. This right here that you see, not handmade. There's some hand signatures on there. It looks like there's one sketch of Boba Fett and IG-88 or something like that on the left. None of that is handmade. All right, that's just mass-produced, and then somebody signing them, and they're stating on the back of the card that, yeah, this was signed by the actor that played Boba Fett or whatever. But, right, there's no third-party verification of any of this. This is just you're taking Top's word for it. This is all hand-created material, right? And it's a consistent product because it's a comic book art page. It tells you the name of the book that it was published in. It tells you who drew it. It tells you what page number it was. And if this is a collector who's serious, on the back, they should have the provenance, right? The chain of custody, where they purchase this from, how much it cost, how they can verify that it goes all the way back to the artist. Like, this is handmade. This is a push of a button at a computer, and they printed it out in a giant machine, right? Walmart, hand-created products. All right, I put this in here so you can understand something. So, for me, Jim Lee is the goat of comics in my mind. For my generation specifically. Look how much his commissions cost. Those 11 by 17s, 9 by 12s, they break it down by sizes. These are all originals. So you can get some very nice things. Hand drawn by a legend of the industry, a person who was in charge of DC, was founder of Image, was in charge of Marvel. This person changed so many things. He helped create the 1992 animated series of X-Men. He's a part of so many people's lives forever. Mickey and Matt Glebe, I don't really think they have this kind of resume. But anyways, this is one of the agents, or the guys in charge of this group of artists. You see his name is Albert Moy, and all the people in the hyperlinks on the left are artists that he would help get contracts for, type of thing. So you communicate to Albert Moy, who then communicates to Jim Lee. You don't communicate to Jim Lee, right? So that's how that's done. And so Mickey and Matt Glebe are in somebody's profile like this, like Albert Moy. Not at the same kind of level, but yeah. All right, and I believe that this is the most important aspect. Access to information. I think a lot of people that are getting involved in the trading card world, they used it as a gateway drug. They were transitioning from maybe another hobby with cards like sports cards, and so they weren't really familiar with the Marvel Universe or anything in regards to information about what things should cost, right? Based off of the long-term collector market price. They've just brought in their implicit bias and started paying amounts of money for something because that's what they would pay in sports cards before they got in here, which is unfortunate because that's not the long-term average price based off of the collector market, right? And so the more information you have, I believe a collector evolves. Maybe their gateway drug was trading cards, and then they discovered, oh, sketch cards. Oh, but who are these people? And then they discover new artists, and they're like, oh, this Wolverine drawn by Jim Lee is amazing. And then they start, they evolve. They find out more information, and the more information you have, the more you evolve. And so the more you realize which products are more special than others, right? And I think that's just the evolution of a collector. So you have to keep that in mind too, because collectors, I feel like there's an old saying, right? The cream always rises to the top. So in the Marvel Universe, if you were to look at trading cards, the cream will always rise to the top. So the money and the demand will always be centered on the best products. And so it's important to understand how to evaluate the products within trading cards to determine which ones are the best. All right. PMGs are special unless they create a PMG set every year. Then they're not so special. Sketch cards are special unless they're drawn by random Instagram famous people. Because over the long term, the collector is not going to care about those people. All right, so like the cream always rises to the top. So you gotta pay attention to that. Also understand investors follow money. So as the Marvel cards start to crash, the investors will move to the next potential market where there's money. Maybe it's stocks. Maybe it's crypto. Maybe it is used cars again. Who knows? But realize the investors will not be here for the long term. The collectors will. So in that idea, if you plan, like I'm relatively healthy. I'm very disabled, but I'm relatively healthy. I still expect to be here in 10 years. So I'll be here long enough for all the investors to leave. And all the prices will be back to normal. Now, they're not going to go back to where they were because the entire market has changed. However, prices will fall and become more stable. And I'll be around for that. So there's no rush. Now, if I was planning, like if I had some kind of expectation of dying in the next 12 months and I really wanted to own something before I left this existence, well, then money wouldn't really matter. And I would just spend it. Right? So like if you expect to be alive in 10 years, and this is something you truly like collecting and you truly like being a part of, just wait. The market is booming. And the market is now slowly busting. So pay attention to that. All right. Speculators try to predict where the money is heading. Just realize that. So they, price fluctuation happens, but over the long term, everything goes back to a stable position. You can't depend on the random people to stay in the hobby and make purchases long term. So buy what you want and realize that if you're trying to buy something to invest and show appreciation over time, now's not a great time to do that. Give it like 3 years and then it'll be a better time. Shiny people do get burned out, right? Like there's only so many shiny things in cards that you're going to like before you move on to the next shiny thing, maybe in Funko Pop figurines or something, right? So just realize these things. Everything goes through a boom. It's, comic books, stocks, housing, used cars, Marvel. So basically my thesis, my kind of idea, it'll continue to fall over the next 12 months. Sketch cards will crash and just be complete trash. As more and more sketch cards are circulated through the market, it'll increase people's education and knowledge base. They'll have access to that information and they'll understand who sketch things, which ones are worth more money than others. Right now, people don't know, so they're just buying stuff. And they've been like that. They've been buying stuff and they don't even know what they're buying. They don't know who FX is. They don't know anything. But as more and more circulate throughout the market, they're going to get more and more educated and they're going to realize that the people that drew these things nobody really cares about. The end users don't really care about. And so the cream will rise to the top. Only a few handful of the sketch cards will actually be worth anything, and everything else will be trash. Right? Overall market size and engagement will continue to crash. So people are going to continue to leave. Right? People are going to be leaving and evolving. There will remain a group that stays loyal to the sketch cards. Don't get me wrong. However, most people that truly are fans of the sketch cards, there'll be a reason for that. Either they love the artist or they love the character image, and they're going to slowly educate themselves and gain access to information about other images, right? And then maybe they're going to move into original art on comic books, and then full page original art, and then maybe 11 by 17 size art, and they're going to be driven to nicer and fancier things, right? Like that's the evolution of any collector. So be aware that the size, the amount of people buying will reduce over time as the market continually shrinks. Remember, there's inflation going on. People can't spend all this money for a trading card. They got to put food on the table. They got to buy gas. So the long-term market price will be set by the long-term collectors that stay in the market, not the people coming in and out. Remember that. Collectibles as a whole will continue to revert to the mean and fall in line with the fine art market. So the fine art market uses very strict principles, right? If you can't prove who drew a piece of art, it's worthless. If you can't prove the chain of custody, how it got from the artist's hands to now into your collection that you have for sale, nobody's going to believe that it's real. You have to have provenance, right? You have to be able to prove where it came from. If the image itself is historical or in some way the pose is meaningful, those kind of things increase or decrease the value. So you have to just be aware of that. Comic art was always aligned with the fine art market, the same kind of principles. And then the boom happened and everything went crazy. And now we're going to start going back to that. So if you want more information about how to educate yourself in this market, like it's something you truly actually like and enjoy, I recommend you look into some fine art information and look at that. All right, so I hope that helps somebody out there. If you have any questions, let me know. This is my perspective. This is my information, my education. I'm just trying to share with everybody. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.